Welcome back to the Sunday No Huddle. Andy Olson, Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com with you. Illinois following up a loss with another loss. Number 7 Penn State comes into Champaign and beats them 30-13. Robert, your initial thoughts in a game that was probably a lot bigger difference than maybe the final score indicates.
Yeah, you can't say closer because it's, at one point it was 30-7. But when there's that many turnovers, it just changes the ball game. It's funny to look at the box score where everything is even. First downs, 20-20. Yards, we're in 39 yards of each other of total yards between the two teams. Third down conversions, almost identical. All the normal stuff was nearly identical. Turnovers, 5-0. There's your football game. So, that's just going to alter a game and take away anything else, good or bad. That's going to be the story of the game.
How are we able to evaluate that performance from Luke Altmaier? Because it's different than anything that we've seen from him up until this point. Now, the Kansas defense offered a few more difficulties than maybe Toledo did. But for the most part, Altmaier has been one of the shining parts of this offense. And then all of a sudden, you just can't seem to catch a break with 4 interceptions.
Yeah, my brain goes back to like the Minnesota game in 2021, 2 years ago, where Illinois got out to a 14-0 lead and played it super safe to where fans were like, well, at least try one pass. And the point of that game is the defense was playing great. The only thing you could do to lose this game is to throw interceptions, and they were not going to do that. It was short passes only, nothing risky. This game, you get behind and you start throwing, and then you're further behind and you keep throwing, and suddenly there's 5 interceptions and it spirals out of control. So, this is a coaching staff. This is a scheme that wants to be safe with the ball and wants to do the opposite to teams. Take the ball away, do what Illinois did to Nebraska last year. 3 big interceptions, and it basically nullified any other chance Nebraska had in the game. Just didn't happen that way with this defense. They're asking the offense to do more, and the offense has been throwing interceptions. So, rough spot.
What do you make of the called plays? Some of those interceptions you can put on Altmaier, didn't see a guy when he was right into the middle of the field. Some of those, it looks like the play was just a 50-50 ball on the go route, and he threw it where it was supposed to go, and it ends up being intercepted. It seems like could be a mix of all 4 interceptions based on, I don't want to say place blame, but
sure,
for the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, my initial reaction, I haven't watched the game on tape yet, so this is just me watching live from the stands. My initial reaction was that maybe they saw something on tape before the Penn State game saying, we could maybe throw some of those back shoulder plays and really catch these aggressive cornerbacks, fighting for the over-the-top ball. You spin your guy outside. I don't know if that's what, maybe these were just bad throws, maybe just underthrown, whatever. But my impression was they saw something that maybe they thought they could sneak some back shoulder throws in there, and it just didn't work. They were getting picked, and, look, they had the one great deep 50-50 ball that was caught, and the crowd goes crazy, but, you just can't throw that many interceptions. It just nullifies an entire game.
All right, moving away from the passing game.
Yep.
We'll put that to bed, move on. Thinking about the running game now. Reggie Love had a really good game. Josh McCray still struggling to find his stride, but we'll start just with the progress that Reggie has made, because I feel like for the first time, and we've heard Brett Bielema talk about this, they just need one run to kind of break off. They didn't have one really break off for a touchdown, super long game, but there are a couple 20-yard gains in there, so more than you were getting. It seems like Reggie has had his best game so far, and hopefully he can build on that. Yeah,
it feels the same as the first 2 games. There's going to be 1 or 2, maybe 3 plays where Reggie is a 1-foot tackle out of stepping out of it and going 30-40 yards, and he's just tripped up. That touchdown run, that was impressive. This is a good Penn State defense, and for him to go face-to-face and run through a couple guys to get in the end zone, that's really impressive. He's really, pushed ahead in the running back race of what we thought would be a 1-2 tandem. He seems to be the guy. It's just, look, I've been to these games before where Illinois had no chance and there just wasn't there. That doesn't feel like this game. This game was, he's so close to stepping out of that. Oh, they're so close to completing that pass, and yet it was a pick. they're just right there, but just making the mistakes that are going to cost them.
All right, looking at the defense now, which despite the score, 30 points allowed to Penn State, it is the number 7 team in the country, I feel played rather well. Johnny Newton, I think, has had his best game of the season against the Nittany Lions. He had a blocked field goal in there, as well as all the defensive work he's been doing. And for the most part, despite being put in tough situations, tough scenarios, the defense really stepped up in this game.
It really did. I mean, that score is going to be deceiving when you're handing them the ball at the 40, at the 30, at the 20. One of their scoring drives was minus 6 yards, and then they kicked a field goal. It's really hard to blame the defense when the defense drives them back and forces them into 4th and 16, and they can still kick a field goal. So you can't really look at the points there. I think the stat of this game, this is something I looked up last night. The average Penn State scoring drive was 38 yards in this game. The average Illinois scoring drive was 65 yards, 63 yards. So when as a Penn State offense, you just have to go 30 yards and then you're in field goal range, you have to go 10 yards in your field goal range, or their final touchdown, they got the ball at the 30, only had to go 30 yards for a touchdown. That just changes an entire game. So I really do think the defense played well. With no turnovers, that's a defense that maybe holds them to 17, 14 points, something like that. And then you're in the game. But it all just comes back to not only that you lose the ball when you do a turnover, you're giving them the ball in great position.
What areas stuck out to you as far as marked improvement from that Toledo game where you give up 28 points to MAC competition, potential MAC champion competition, but still, and a Kansas team who is known for throwing the ball and running all over the place?
Yeah, they seemed, if you watch, I think everyone at halftime was looking at the score of 16-7 and thinking, this could be a 31-7 game right now. Forcing those field goals, stuffing these drives that are short. That was really helpful. So I think, a lot of the defense's issues. Look, Matt Bailey made 5 great tackles when he was in there just for a quarter and a half before he got injured again. So getting some of these players back, getting Johnny Newton to have the All-American kind of game, feels like all the defensive issues were well on their way to being fixed. But, football's a little more than just that.
Yeah, for me, that defensive line push that they were getting up front against one of the best offensive line units in the country was most impressive, because it felt like through those first 2 games, you didn't sack DeQuan Finn at all for Toledo in their very first game of the season. In this game, they were finally getting pressure on Drew Aller. Now, some of that maybe you don't have to worry about him running as much as the other 2 opponents that you've had so far, but that is, for me, the biggest thing is just that push that you're able to get, which leads to quicker throws, which helps out your secondary and just helps out the defense in general. Yeah,
it felt like a well on their way kind of thing. If the defensive plays like that against Florida Atlantic or against Purdue or any of these struggling Big Ten West offenses right now, you think it feels like it might get the sense that it's last year again. But it's really, like football's game to game, and you fix this thing and this thing falls apart, and then you fix this thing and another team picks on you this way. So this is a whole process here of the new players, the new starters, them finding the right rotation. They're doing the same thing on the offensive side of the ball with the offensive line. They're still trying to figure it out. They're trying this. Maybe we sub these guys more. Maybe we keep these guys a little more fresh. Maybe we go with a deeper rotation. Just seems like they're still working through those things so that they're ready for the meat of the conference play. And,
not to look too much into garbage time, but John Paddock comes in and is able to get some stuff going against the backups for Penn State. Malik Elzy gets his first collegiate touchdown. I imagine that we'll see more from him. Can you take anything from that? Brett Bielema said after the game, there's not a QB competition. I believe him on that. It just seemed like the circumstances were the circumstances for Altmaier today. But can you take anything from those last half of that fourth quarter? Because I have my own marks, but I want to hear from you first.
It's always tough. Obviously, Penn State took a lot of their starters out. The guys who had those interceptions were out of the game at this point. Who knows if they pick off John Paddock as well? It's hard to say when you switch to the twos, playing the twos, whether it's something to pay attention to or not. But I think the individual play, especially of Elzy and Kanari Wilcher in his first game, there's been a lot of talk about these two freshman receivers, and you've got the big guy on the outside and you got the short guy on the inside, and they really complement each other well and could be the future of this offense. So getting to see that, getting to see the LZ touchdown, getting to see the big pass play to Wilcher, it's encouraging. It's showing some depth. It's showing what the future is, but it's never the scenario you want. You want them having those plays when it's still a game and not when it's 30-7 and everybody's gone to the second string.
Well, speaking of getting them in, because that was what I kind of got from that garbage time as well, is LZ's a really good receiver. It doesn't matter if it was the backup that he was up against on that touchdown, still went up there and made that catch. Is it possible to get those guys playing time? And do you think that's something that the coaches are looking at right now? Because it seems like there's so many different pass catching options for the Illini with three big receivers. You got Tip Ryman in there as well. Griffin Moore had a great day against Kansas. It just, a lot of mouths to feed at the moment. Yeah,
I think anytime you're talking about freshman receivers, I'm always thinking in terms of the running plays. When there's a running play, a receiver is basically an offensive lineman. He is there to block, and that's usually where freshmen are behind. It's usually where freshmen, if you see some freshman receiver who's not playing and think, man, that guy could really be helpful and look how athletic he is, it's probably because when it's a running play, he's getting beat by his guy and the edge isn't set, and there's a cornerback coming free. So that's I'm just speculating here, but that's a lot of the thing that freshman receivers need to do to get in the game. They have to be ready for every single play call and every single rotation, and it just takes time. But yes, 100%. LZ using his body to shield the guy, jumping at the right time, catching that touchdown pass. That's why he was a 4-star. He is a physical threat. He is a ball winner, and Illinois fans hope to see that a lot in the future.
Hard to believe that we are 25% of the way done with the regular season. 1-2, I believe, if anyone looked at the schedule ahead of time, you look at these first three games, that was always on the table. We would have liked to be 2-1, but I just want to get your thoughts at this point. I don't think it's time to push the panic button, but where are you with this team right now as they get into the next chunk of the schedule, which you get some more Big Ten West games, definitely winnable ones as well?
Yeah. When you say that, the first thought that comes to my mind is the 33-yard catch by Casey Washington in the Toledo game on 4th and 16 or whatever it was. You don't come down with that catch, you're 0-3 right now, So that was a very, very big play. You're right. Illinois has not been the favorite in the last two games and has lost the last two games. Kansas was favored by 3.5 and won by 11. Penn State was favored by 14 and won by 17 or whatever. So it's kind of played out to what were the expectations were when you play this schedule. 1-2 would have been the expectation in Las Vegas, and so that kind of gives the opportunity for this week. Your favorite, I saw the opening line at 13 over something like that over Florida Atlantic. I saw that their quarterback got injured in the Clemson game and might not be playing, and he's a threat who really, when he was at Nebraska last year, had a really great first quarter, and actually Nebraska had the lead early second quarter against Illinois. So, this is a game where you say, okay, favored by 13, tough opening of the season, time to take a inferior opponent and put it to them. This is the type of situation where you need to start to feel better about your rotation, start to feel better about the players you're working into there, dominate a smaller school opponent, and get ready for Big Ten play.
Not to look too far ahead either, but it's not much better opponent, I think, to get into Big Ten play with than Purdue.
Yes, that'll be, the side stories will be the story that week. The former coach versus the current coach and the former coordinator, and if it remains a night game on NBC, and if there's going to be storylines and there's going to be everything else. And if Illinois is 2-2 going into that and looking to get back to get to 3-2 or get to 1-1 in the conference, that's going to be a really, really big game.
All right, Robert, thanks so much for joining us on the Sunday No Huddle. Hope to talk to you again next week, hopefully after a win this time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andy.